Business Development Program Manager for Portland. She has 20 years experience in managing university programs.
Yep. Yeah. We don't need the big bio. We don't need all that. I got kids. There's all you need to know. I'm tired. All right, so I'm not going to fall apart. All right, so thank you guys for participating this afternoon. I know we're the last class before you guys get all radical and dress up like it's the 80s. So, but we're going to have fun. This is going to be an interactive workshop, so it's not going to be just us talking to you. We're going to have some fun at the end of it where you guys are actually going to get kind of roll up your sleeves and do some hands-on fun. All right. So I am Kimberly Sutton. I am the Small Business Program Manager for the Port of Portland. And today we're going to talk about best practices, how to eliminate barriers in contracting as at your agency. So go here. We're going to talk about eliminating barriers in contracting, provide some overarching guidance, understand what we can and can't get from diversity language that you include in your procurement. Types of evaluation questions, and then we're going to do our mock evaluation, which is that fun wake you up type thing, and we'll talk about have some questions afterwards. So beyond civil injustices that a lot of minority communities are faced with, there are several underlying issues that primarily center on economic disparity. There's unemployment, low workforce readiness, lack of transportation infrastructure, affordable housing, and many other issues that negatively impact minority communities nationwide. Local government agencies are in a unique position to change their procurement processes in a way that enables small and minority-owned businesses to create jobs and hopefully generate wealth, and hopefully generate generational wealth, which is that kind of money that you can pass on from generation to generation. Today we're going to discuss unintentional contracting barriers and how to overcome them and review the best practices for inclusion of small business language in your RFPs. So here are some common barriers that small businesses are facing just across the board. This isn't localized. This is pretty much a national trend. Timely bid notifications. So if you're thinking through how long your procurement process is do folks have 2 weeks to respond or 1 month to respond? If you're a small business and you carry all the hats, you're the front office, the marketing, the power behind every infrastructure that, you know, you're the one doing it all. You're the janitor at the end of the day and you're the bookkeeper in HR. 2 weeks might not be enough time to bid on something if they're already in the middle of another project. So that's just an easy one to think about. Bonding and insurance requirements, thinking about tailoring those requirements to fit the actual work. Are we just slapping on a $1 million bond on every project, regardless of what's going on? Are we asking for higher levels of insurance for maybe a $5,000 contract? So taking a few moments to look at that and see if there's any kind of wiggle room or processes within your agency that you can use to eliminate that particular barrier. Slow payments, are people getting paid? Are there any front loading for businesses? Are they getting paid in advance? Is it 60 days out? Is it 90 days out? Taking a look at what that is. Slow payments are one of the biggest reasons that small businesses go out of business. They've got to make payroll. They can't, and it just becomes a gravy train of issues following that. High qualifications requirements. Are you guys asking for the moon and the stars for them to just come in and do one simple task? So looking at, are you inherently eliminating a small business just because you want them to have a PhD in economics when all they're doing is balancing your checkbook? So that's kind of like balancing those the qualification specs. Online registration. Tracy and I had a very interesting play with this because we went on to a lot of different partner agency sites and tried to just register and download documents to see what's out there. We didn't want to make this the Port and Metro show. Right. And it was, I mean, I know what I'm doing. I don't think I'm the brightest person on the block, but I also know I'm not the dimmest. Yeah.
This was my job at one point.
I ran into so much trouble just registering. They weren't user friendly. Some places wanted to charge me. It was all over the place. I would task you to go back to your agency, pretend you are John Doe at John Doe Company, and register and see how hard it is. Go through the process and see really what the small business owner or even the large business owner is experiencing. It's crazy.
really fast from King County, maybe I shouldn't say that. But we do what's called process roundings, where our division director and the deputy director come around and say, oh, hey, show me one of the things that you do, right? It doesn't take very long, like once a month they come around and they choose somebody. When we went to the admin team, they chose this because we know it's horrible and we've asked to have it changed and we don't have the power to change it, but the director does. And they challenged the director and the deputy director to sit down and create online registration, and they couldn't do it. And the director was kicked out of the system 3 times.
And by the way, King County was one of the agencies I got frustrated with. I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, so I applaud you for like, yes. And I applaud you guys for being aware of it and saying, yeah, this has to be fixed. I went ahead and registered with the port just to see how hard it was. Just, yeah, and so, but it gives me a perspective when I'm going out into the community and talking to a small business or any business owner. Go, okay, so here's what you need to know, and be able to help guide them. And then, of course, lack of relationships in large contract sizes. So are we making the contracts so large that only a large multinational firm can prime those? Or are we breaking out this into little smaller packages to make it easier so your neighbor, people that you know might be able to take those on? And I always look at small business programs as this. This is like my frame of mind. When you are supporting a local small business, you are actually putting food on the table, putting kids through college, paying medical bills for your neighbors, people who live in your community. When you support a large multinational business, you're buying someone a yacht and helping them to buy their third vacation home. I don't know about you, but I like supporting the guy to buy his first home, not his third vacation home. So that's my view on things. I'm gonna turn over to Tracy, but I will keep the clicker.
And for those of you in the room,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm all in the way. I just like to be on the camera the whole time. I'm gonna come over here.
so for those of you in the room, the microphone is still recording. I don't think it's broadcasting in there, but that's why I'm holding it, so I'm not crazy.
She's crazy.
So just a clarification point too. We're going to be referring to small business because it's the fastest thing to say. But there are lots of businesses that we're particularly targeting, and as Kim really mentioned, we are really focused on those businesses who have faced the biggest hardships and the biggest barriers to opportunity. And so primarily our programs should focus on breaking down those barriers for businesses owned by people of color and women. And throughout this presentation, we will commonly use the phrase small business.
Tracy, somebody had a question in the back.
Yeah, we'll start.
So essentially, you're talking about emerging small business.
I'm saying just the word small business. I'm not referring to a particular certification when I say that word small business.
Because it could vary by agency, which one.
Yeah, we'll get to certifications
Yeah.
in a little bit, yeah. So when you're getting ready, when you're thinking, okay, what I really need to do is put some good language in my RFP so that I can get these small businesses on board. Before you start doing that, make sure that you are taking a holistic approach to address the barriers in your organization, because it won't do any good to put that language in your RFP if you haven't addressed all of the other things in your agency that are making it difficult for these businesses. So make sure that you're addressing these barriers and creating opportunities. That's what these programs are about. So when you're looking at your programs, do you have equity language that refers to your organizational equity language as well as contracting equity language? When you start putting things in an RFP, how much weight are you giving to equity? If you don't score equity, what message are you sending? What does it tell your suppliers if you ask for a requirement and don't give it a score? It's not important, right? So it's all lip service. That's the opposite message that you want to be sending in this area. So I think that 15 or 20% is a minimum for scoring for values-based portions of your RFP at Metro. We do 20% for diversity and employment and contracting, and an additional 10% for sustainable business practices. That adds up to 30% for our values. What kind of message does that send?
Mm-hmm.
We care. Right? We're willing to give you 30% of the points because you do well in these areas. As Kimberly mentioned, are you giving enough response time? We have to make sure that that small businesses have time to step away from work and all the other things that they do to write these responses. Who in this room has written a proposal? Great. So that's great because at least then you can think about your experience in writing a proposal. They're not easy, right? And a lot of times they don't even have anything to do with the type of work the business is doing, but we're expecting them to also be skilled in that area. So keep that in mind when you're writing your questions. Make it as easy as possible. But make sure that when you're doing that, you're actually getting answers that will help you evaluate firms. Are you charging for bid docs? If you are, why are you charging that business? If you're charging for bid and proposal documents, think of it like charging a person a fee to be able to access job posting information. That sounds absurd, so why are we doing it contracted? What about your response requirements? When I was, before I came to Metro, I was a sustainability consultant in a certified small firm, and I also wrote our proposals. We got this one proposal, it was from out of state somewhere, but it was for a school district, and they wanted 20 copies on USB drives. It's like, are you asking us to provide your school supplies for the children? What? Why are we?
20 USB drives and 10 number 2 pencils.
So, as a small business, you think about that, plus it had to be shipped, and you start adding all of those fees in there, and it adds expense to the proposal. What about your requalification process? How often do firms have to be pre-qualified? All of these barriers, all of these transactions add time and cost. Does the small business community know someone from your organization? Is there a face out there? Do they have a relationship with someone? If they have questions, are they comfortable that their questions will be asked? Do they have any sort of confidence that you will be giving them a fair shot because they actually know somebody in your organization? It's really important to provide consistency in those interactions. Yeah.
Before we get too deep into it, because I'm seeing already equity language and waiting for equity and all that, how are we defining equity?
Oh, we have a couple.
We're going to get there.
Examples that we'll show you in just a minute. Yes, thank you. Okay, and then also, are you requiring subcontracting reporting if there are subcontracts? And in what format? Are you providing something that is easy or something that is another burden, another difficulty? If you, like Metro, have a difficult process, maybe you can have, like, I loved your example there, have your director go through and say, here's your task. This isn't something that we're asking firms to do monthly. See how you like it.
It's funny.
Yes.
Next slide.
Yeah. All right, so those are just ways to look at your overall program and make sure that you're supporting your efforts in the RFP process through your whole program. Overarching guidance when you are looking at including language in your RFP, if you don't have a disparity study, which who here has a disparity study? A current defensible disparity study. Okay.
Gretchen does.
Are you also at the board? Yep. Okay, the board. In here has a disparity study. So if you don't, make sure that your language is race and gender neutral. That's the law. Make sure that you are giving clear guidance. Take a litmus test on this. Give it to somebody who is not in your department. Have them read it and tell you what they think about it. Tell them how they would answer those questions. That's a good way to know whether you're being clear. Make sure that you're scoring consistently. At Measure, we use a process that I know a lot of agencies don't use, but it works for us. So our procurement department evaluates all proposals for equity and sustainability. So that means that we're taking those 30 points and we're evaluating them amongst the same group of about 10 people.
And that's the same at the port as well. The small business department scores all the social equity and small business points as well.
So the reason why we do that is because we have a small group of people that we can train on those questions, that we can train on our expectations for those questions. And it also kind of separates that ability for programs to kind of say, oh, well, I really want this firm to win, so let's kind of like work it in our favor. There's a little bit of separation of duties, which is just good business practice. And then also it provides really consistent scoring for businesses, because if they submit a proposal for the zoo or the expo center or our parks division, they're going to get a similar score in those sections. Whereas I know I've heard from firms that they could go to other agencies and get wildly different evaluations on their equity questions.
So what happens if your agency doesn't have a equity department?
Well, we just in our procurement department, so there is no equity department that evaluates that. Those are our procurement analysts.
So if you
that
have
are-
analysts that, like, Marion County,
Yeah,
we don't have that.
yeah, I said, I mean, it's not feasible for everybody, but when you are scoring, provide training at least on how these should be scored and what your expectations are. At the very least, make sure that they're consistent across the agencies.
I've seen some smaller agencies have one person score them and provide suggested scores and the reasoning behind it to the evaluators.
I know we have people from outside of Oregon here, so make sure that you're checking your local state laws and your local laws to make sure that all of this is, that you're following those. We both come from the Oregon environment, so we'll be speaking mostly to that. Also, it's really helpful to provide guidance on how to respond to RFPs. As I mentioned before, proposals are not generally the business that most firms are in, so it can be very difficult to know how to respond to this. At Metro, we have a pretty small budget for business support, and we spend it on proposal writing workshops. And people love it. The other agencies in the area also love it.
I
because they
love
send
it.
people our way.
I do.
And we don't have the money for a great huge program, so this is our contribution. And they're really helpful. They're pretty low cost. They're effective. And very popular. So, also, we like to provide a couple points just for being a small business. At Metro, it's 5 points, so that's 5% of the total score that you can only get by being a small firm, a certified small firm, and we'll define that later. That's not the way that everybody does it, but that's what Metro does. Also provide guidance to bidders and proposers on how to find these small businesses if they're going to be doing subcontracting. We need to, it's in our best interest, not just to say, oh, you don't know how to do this, sorry, we don't want to work with you. It's in our best interest to get other firms up to speed as well. So providing that support, providing feedback, offering the debrief process. A lot of firms don't even know that that's a possibility. And making sure that you're actually out there, that representative who is talking to firms and giving them support and information. While the solicitation is open, we can't have explicit conversations about that project, but you can still have conversations about what does page length mean. There are lots of things that you can help people with that doesn't have anything to do with that solicitation.
Oh, this is me. I was going to grab the microphone so I remember that I have one on my lapel here. Thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your agency commitment. And that is really kind of your agency's policy statement to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so one thing I would recommend is that you're looking at your procurement and just make sure you have a statement that is the assertion of what DEI is for your agency and your commitment to ensure that it's included within your contracting processes. I would also suggest that you provide links about your agency. I don't know how many people have a small business page on their company's or their agency's website, or any sort of link specifically for small businesses to learn how to do business with you. But if you do, make sure you're offering links to those websites. I always say have a dedicated small business manager. I understand some of the smaller agencies can't do that, but if you have that in your wheelhouse and your capacity, make sure that you do, and that the small business community is directed towards that person. They understand who that is. At the very least, establish an overall goal for your agency. Take a look at what kind of contracts you let, what the small business community in your area looks like, and set a goal, 10%, 20%, just overall, that's what we're gonna, as a team, try to achieve within our region. And then I always say track commitments. All of this is pie in the sky if you're not tracking. Figure out at the very basic, you can do it on Excel spreadsheets. I don't recommend it. It's a headache. It's the way we did it pre-1999. It was horrible. So there are low-cost diversity tracking systems that you can purchase, but at least find some method to track if you can. If you have it in your budget, because I understand that everybody's budgets are a little bit different. Here is, talking about agency commitments, here is the Ports Agency commitment. This is what we put in all of our procurements, and Metro. I won't read them to you unless you really want me to. But as you can see, so a lot of them are pretty comparable, and I've seen other agency commitments, not just in Oregon, but in other states as well, that are pretty much talking about the same thing, that, you know, your agency is committed to ensuring that there's equity in contracting, that you guys want to kind of leverage partnerships and do what the agency can to help support the local small business community. And so this is ours, and you were talking about what is equity. This is what equity means to the port, and that's what equity means to Metro. How many here have some sort of a statement similar within their own procurements? Do you know? Okay. Feel free to copy mine. Just, you know, copy and paste. But just kind of, and that's probably the step one, because once your agency has committed, or you have a definition of a commitment, then that drives the rest of your equity program. But I think it starts at the top and then works its way down. Look for ways to integrate DEI throughout the solicitation. If it's just in one section, the small business section or whatever you end up calling it, that has a different message. But if you're looking through RFP and you're talking about equity within different pieces of the RFP and qualifications or an experience or approach for work, it really tells a different message that this is important to the agency. And if you're a proposer reading it, you're going to go, I better take this seriously. When you're looking at the project description and the scope of work, there's opportunities to integrate DEI in that discussion as well. We were talking earlier about breaking up some of the bigger packages, designing the work in a way that a small contractor can take feasible portions of it. It's like if you're bundling it up and you only want one person to perform it all, that there is a barrier within itself. Make sure that the scope itself isn't creating unnecessary barriers. One thing that I'm seeing, and this is really in the construction side, I've seen a little bit on the professional services, but speccing out material that it has to be this particular roof composite material, or it has to be this type of carpet, or whatever that is, and the only certified sellers or installers of that are large firms. There's no small businesses within that that can have the warranty to install it. And so kind of looking at your spec materials, that is a definite barrier I'm starting to see. Have you seen that?
Yeah, Metro recently had an instance of that, and what we did when we realized that was the problem, we had a couple failed bid attempts, and then when we realized that was the problem, we required a partnership so that the firm who was a certified installer would teach another certified firm, like COVID certified firm, how to do that and get them through the installation certifiers process so that they would then be able to be a certified installer of that product. So that was an example of building capacity for those firms through our
and then, of course, phasing the work in a manner that allows small businesses to do it. So do you want it all done in 1 week, or do you want the work done in a month, right? It just depends. That makes a difference. So phasing the work in a manner, and that's something the engineers really can do. The engineers have to really take a look at the approach there, but you can work with the engineers. I'm going to let Tracy take this one. Go ahead.
So we talk about all of these different certifications. There are probably lots of them that you are aware of that aren't even up here. There's a certification alphabet soup, and you have to define in your organization, primarily based on the type of funding that you have, which certification you're going to be recognizing. So at Metro, we are a locally funded government agency that has some federal funding on a couple projects. So primarily we use the Certification Office of Business Inclusion and Diversity, and they have the MBE, WBE, SDV. Those are the certifications that they use. We call it COVID certified.
So much easier.
If you're using any federal funding, then you will be using the DBE program. The Port of Portland also uses the ACDBE program, or Port Concessionaire DBE. So know which certifications are applicable to you. There are some certifications that I would be careful of. For example, there is the 8A certification, which is a federal one for small businesses. It's self-reported, so there is no sort of check on whether it's true or not. So relying on the Certification Office of Business Inclusion and Diversity in Oregon is really great because as a public agency, we don't have to spend the time certifying. We can rely on this other agency that already does it, that has a good program, transparent process. That's what we like to do. When you're thinking about your evaluation questions, make sure that you're looking at more than just the firm ownership, because that will only reach some of your projects. And that's not the only way that you can encourage diversity and equity. So ask about the firm's history with subcontracting and promoting and providing business opportunities to certified firms. What sort of programs do they have in place? If you're doing an alternative procurement for construction, you should be dealing with construction firms that have significant technical support programs in place. It is industry practice it's common industry practice for that. Ask questions about their history of utilization, whether there was a goal on the project or not. That's a really important indicator. Can firms get significant utilization of certified firms when there is no goal on the project? What does that tell you? If there is significant utilization when there is no goal. That they're committed. It's just part of their business. That's just what they do. They're not doing it because, oh, I'm working for Metro and they tell me that I have to do this. So okay, let's pick these firms, these certified firms. It's just part of their business practice. Those are the business relationships that they have. In the particular project, you can ask about what portion of the contract is going to be going to certified firms. It's really important to think about what scopes of services are included in the certified firms, because what can happen oftentimes is that the low value, the types of work that don't create a lot of real economic opportunity for businesses will be the ones that get subcontracted out to certified firms. So what you really want to see is providing capacity development. You want to see sometimes a prime may have to give away a portion of what they could self-fulfill to a sub so that they're fulfilling some of these goals. That shows commitment if they're giving away a portion of what they could self-fulfill, because that's money out of their pocket to make sure that they're meeting the goals. Make sure that there is a commitment that is in the proposal, and that commitment that gets into the proposal makes it into the contract, because none of this is binding if it's not in the contract. You also want to be asking about firm demographics. So it's not just about firm ownership, that's one part. But where do new business owners get their experience?
This is a question.
Working for other people. So you also want to know that there is there's a diversity in the employees of that firm, because those are the people who are most likely to start their own businesses.
How do you go about?
Yeah, we have questions that just say, tell us about the diversity in your firm. Tell us what portion of people you have that are people of color and women, and what sorts of roles are they in? Are there people of color and women throughout the organization? Are they in leadership roles?
With counseling of I-200, we aren't allowed to ask those questions.
Well, we don't ask about individuals, we ask about overall numbers. So,
Yeah, but I don't. And this is again is that Yeah, but this is again that question of like check your state rules, right? Yeah.
They're working on I-1000.
Change.
1,000 sounds like a great number. Where you can ask about these things, and perhaps you can ask about policies to promote diversity in the workplace. Not only to hire people, but to retain them and to educate them. Are there any employee resource groups for the people, the non-dominant culture people in your organization? Do they do frequent diversity, equity, inclusion trainings? These are sorts of things that you probably could ask about, even if you can't ask about the demographics. And they might tell you about that firm's commitment to diversity.
It's called an innovation plan for equity and justice. Comes with evaluation points.
Okay.
Oh.
So you submit a plan and then it becomes part of the
Oh,
contract.
Yes.
nice.
Okay. So innovation plan is one.
I like that
one
name.
way that I like that too. Some ways that you might identify that a firm is kind of using smoke and mirrors. If they're talking about, we put the diverse employee on this project. Okay, that is tokenizing language, and that is not a true firm commitment. That is them not understanding what you're asking for. Make sure that you make an allocation for if there's a sole proprietorship. So if you were dealing with a sole proprietor and you're expecting them to tell you about their firm demographics, they may not have any. But they can tell you about all of the other excellent things that they're doing in the community, like working in a STEM program in the schools, or donating to educational programs or things like that. So here we have a couple descriptions of how Metro and
Oh, let me
Port
switch.
Portland
Okay, thank you.
how we include those in ours, and I'll just give you just a second to read those. Again, you have these on your USB drives, so you can take a more detailed look at those later. Also, you should be asking about subcontracting in the project, so make sure that you're not overlooking the fact that the prime contractor could be a certified firm. So, but even if they are certified, their work's not done. They need to be held to the same standards as everybody else. So you also want to ask about their subcontracting. Ask about their history of working with diverse subcontractors and meeting goals. What you're trying to see here is that they have relationships, but it's not a transactional. You asked for this, so okay, whatever, I'll get this firm on. Ask about their methods of subcontracting with certified firms, how they get them on board, what their pre-qualification process is like, and then have them make a proposal for the individual project that you're evaluating. So, next.
No, I did.
Okay. So these are examples that would show good efforts in this way for the firm to be able to describe their outreach methods, scopes with opportunity, what technical support, mentorship, business development programs they have, what sort of bonding assistance. These are ways that the firms, if they have programs, these are the sorts of things that they would be listing. So you can, in your questions next, ask for these things. These are examples of how the Port Portland and Metro ask for these questions. So at Metro, we just, I had to abbreviate ours because it's kind of long. The Port had a nice little short response, but I'll give you another second to read those.
All right, we good? All right, some other ways to incorporate equity into your program is to have a workforce program. And these are really for your construction projects. How many folks here have a workforce program or know what a workforce program is? Okay, so a workforce program requires that a percentage of the total labor hours go to apprentices. And then above that, you can have diversity within that apprentice utilization. So you might require that the apprentice goal is 10% minority and 5% women on top of that. And some jurisdictions even go so far as to require zip code requiring, so ensuring that you're recruiting folks from disadvantaged communities. Generally, it applies to work that have union or skilled crafts, so carpentry, masonry, heavy equipment operators, flaggers, trucking. And usually, lately I'm starting to see, and this is something the port does, I don't know if the other jurisdictions are doing it, but we have diversity goals on the journey level as well as the apprentice level now, so we're incorporating diversity requirements on both sides. And this is really, the idea behind this is to make sure that women and people of color are getting opportunities to have jobs within on our construction projects, so that all the money isn't going just to one group of folks, which was the historical practices. There was a lot of barriers for people of color and women to get into the unions because it was really about, you know, my brother, my uncle, my cousin, my neighbor gets in, but if you don't have those relationships, then you were kind of waitlisted. And women and people of color both have faced serious discrimination and harassment on job sites. So these programs are really there to overcome those issues and help make sure that people within our community are getting jobs and not being treated unfairly.
And again, the people who are working for other people are the ones who are going to start businesses. So this is your diverse business ownership pipeline, having a diversity workforce.
Yes. So apprentices are, like we were talking about earlier, are recruited from disadvantaged communities, which means that you're helping to lower the need for public assistance in some situations. You are helping to provide living wage jobs, which means that people have medical care for their children. They're able to provide food and good food, not just the, you know, better quality food, and you're able to ensure that your kids have a stable home and all of those good things that you want your neighbor to have, right? So you get into that disadvantaged community and you're just supporting living wage jobs and helping to kind of break the barrier of the cycle of poverty in some situations. I actually, just as a side note, I don't know about time, but I recently met a young man who was homeless, living on the streets, and he went through a pre-apprenticeship program. And through that program, I was there the day he got his first apartment. And it was one of the most beautiful moments. He had been living on the streets for years, but through the pre-apprenticeship programs, he was able to finally get his own apartment. He was able to he had a bus pass. He was very excited, and he had a job. I mean, and he was 18 and he was homeless. I mean, I don't know about you, but that day I cried when I met him, and it was just a heart-wrenching story. So that's what these pre-apprenticeship programs do. That's what these goals do, is they're actual people, right? They're not just numbers. And also this part here that supports the aging workforce. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the baby boomers are retiring, and there is a lack of skilled craft workers to complete all these mega projects that are going on in our region. I know I was in Seattle 2 weeks ago, and there were cranes everywhere. I mean, they were all over the place. And to the fact that we have workers going up to Seattle to work because you guys are paying more. Stop it. And so, but there's a aging workforce. So if we're going to make sure we're going to continue to build our infrastructure, we need to fill that somehow. And then, as Tracy said, they become the small business owners in the future, right? So here's workforce language. I stole Multnomah County's workforce language, and you can just kind of see ours is not as intense as Multnomah County's, but we do provide them with a packet upon award that describes all of the efforts they have to make, and we track the utilization of workforce throughout the project. Our goal right now, we have just increased it to 20%, and then we have to have diversity goals. I think our diversity goals are 15 and 12, I can't remember, we just changed them. But that's just an example of what you guys can do and take a snapshot of what's available in your region. And let's see here. So let's see here, am I on this one too? Okay, just gonna keep going. Diversity plan. So the diversity plan is understanding what, after they are awarded the project, it's making sure the rubber hits the road, right? So it's having that meeting when you sit down with the contractor and just say, give me your plan. How are you, now that you're awarded the work, and here's your start date, what's your plan to meet the goals on the project? One thing that we do here is we require online reporting that's done monthly. It's actually required for them to submit that into the system before they get paid. So it's that whole carrot carrot analogy. They have to submit that or their pay app is denied. The other piece is we have monthly compliance meetings. We're a bigger jurisdiction. I currently have 5 small business programs I manage under my umbrella. And so for me, compliance meetings just makes sure that we're not missing something and that folks are actually getting the work they're promised to get. We coordinate with our prime contractors for what outreach they're going to do and make sure they're engaging the right community members for the work. Sometimes that means sitting down with them and saying, what's your outreach plan? Are you going to go to this community group? Are you going to talk to the National Association of Minority Contractors? Are you going to hold a special outreach just so all the small businesses within this community understand what opportunities are and when the bid packages are going to come out? And then again, tracking and reporting. And you're going to hear me say track and report because again, if you're not tracking, you don't have a program. You don't even know what they're doing. You have to track, even if it's the most basic level of tracking. So here is examples of diversity plan language that we put in to our procurements, and there's metros, and I'll give you a second to take a look at that. I think you're up next. All right, you're up. And then I'm going to start handing out, while Tracy's covering the last slide, I'm going to start handing out some forms for the next phase of this.
Okay, so we've given you lots of suggestions for things to include in RFP language. And that's just the beginning because that gets you to your goal, that gets you to your plan, diversity plan. And so it's really important to stick with it throughout the period of contract performance. But in a lot of agencies, the contract performance is actually monitored by the departments, by your customers. So it's not necessarily going to be something that you're doing in procurement. But you
I hope
can
I got
help
enough for everybody.
guidance on the sorts of things that are in
It should
there.
be
Make sure that you're having
3
really good
sets.
communication about what was included in that.
So just take the top 3.
And make sure it gets into the contract, and then it's monitored throughout the life of the contract. So Kimberly mentioned those compliance meetings.
I know, I tried to make this easy. I didn't do a good job.
There are different tracking tools. Again, Metro, we haven't authorized the money to spend on a tracking system. I am really hoping for one soon. But we use spreadsheets. So I think everyone has access to some form of spreadsheets. So that can be done. What you're getting in your hand, or what you're getting handed out to you right now, we're going to do a mock evaluation. So how many of you evaluate proposals as part of your job? Not very many, and this is something that I think is important to recognize about procurement is we think about the language that should be included in RFPs, but then we're rarely the people who actually
Did you want one?
evaluations. So it would be helpful for you to do evaluation.
It's 3 pages. Yeah, they're all. Everybody should have 3 pages. I'm sorry, just claim it.
So what we're giving you is the first page there with a list, kind of lettered list there is what would be included in your RFP. So this is the list of what we're asking for in a small business enterprise program. You can read through that real quick. It is basically duplicated on the last page, which is put into a table format, and that it's almost word for word the same information. And then this is kind of an evaluation sheet, so you can see between the 2 firms that we got submitted, we got in thinking about our 80 tonight, we got Awesome Engineering and Totally Radical Engineering. So you can write down comments for how Awesome Engineering and Totally Radical Engineering did in each column as they respond to each of those questions.
And we purposely pick mid-range responses. Like we didn't want, boy, this was amazing or this was terrible. We wanted kind of the middle of the road type of response that we typically see in response in RFPs.
So as you know, it is a proposer's responsibility to answer what you've asked for. So are they providing you information that's helpful related to what's asked for? So we're going to give you a couple minutes to go through. We'd like you to quickly evaluate response A and response B, and then we'll have you talk briefly to the people around you about how you evaluated them, and what you thought, see if there are any disagreements or anything like that. And then we'll come together as a group and talk about more overarching things with the evaluation. So go ahead, take a few minutes and evaluate awesome engineering and totally radical engineering.
Totally radical, dude.
Totally radical. All right.
I almost made them Game of Thrones names, but then I changed my mind after seeing the final. I'm all hold on.
And one thing I'll add is on the first page it says that it's 15 points, and on your evaluation it says 10. It is actually 15, so you can evaluate on a 15-point scale.
Oh, we do weight 1 to 10 at ours.
Each?
No.
Or just total?
Yeah. No, I know. We give them 1 to 10 points. It's weighted at 15% of the score. I don't make the shit up. But my 10 points go 15% of the score. Whatever. much time do we have? Practice over.
So just a time check. Hopefully you're through maybe your evaluating your first response. So you should try to move on to the second response to make sure you get both.
What? Huh? What kind of discussion? That's the we're going to talk about.
Wow.
Not uncommon. These are actual responses that we received. These are actual responses. I try to redact the names to protect the innocent. And that's a big one. No, I save it because that's what we're going to talk about because that's the point. That what? No, engineering firm. Yeah, so score it with 15. The port does a weird weighting thing, so ignore that. Just score it up to 15.
15 to
I did it the port way. Apparently, we're the only weirdos that do it that way. Enjoy that. See how many. No one that gets our weighting. That's spreadsheet of weighting. No one ever understands that.
If you and the neighbor have completed your evaluation, go ahead and talk to each other about what you scored, what you found was good about the responses or missing about the responses, and come together as a group.
Oh, God. Look at that, too. He's like nice. Bill would have shut that down. I expect good review from you. I expect a thoughtful and insightful response.
They have identified specifics where.
Thank you. I'm watching.
You are, I know.
It's part of the job interview. I'll be looking for misspellings as well. Yeah, grammar check. We have the 15-minute signal. Yeah, so then I thought, yeah, we'll ask him, what do you think about the questions and the responses, and kind of, you know, do you think we could have done, is there some way we could rephrase the question that we're going to have better response? But it may let them know that in general, people, if they don't have programs, they will give you a bunch of fluff. And I think this first one is a really good example of fluff. If we don't have a program, but we're going to fluff you. That was what you were talking about earlier, right? What did that response tell you about this particular engineering firm if you were to hire them? Because a lot of procurement people never get an opportunity to actually evaluate. Oh my God, she's like having a hot flash out there. I see that. It's got a good conversation going on here.
We're gonna come back together in about 2 minutes. Conversation.
So these, you know, we wanted to get like some examples of responses that we typically see. You're like, so, you know, fluff versus somebody who actually tried,
I mean, there was definitely a difference.
right? But the minute she's talking about that fluff piece.
And it wasn't for much longer. Easier about the same rate.
Mhm.
But they understood.
And this is one reason why, like Metro and myself, we only have certain people read it or score those sections for that reason. Because some people believe the fluff. They're like, well, they said they would do it. 10 points. Right?
Okay, wrap up your conversation. Let's bring it back to the paper.
All right, who had fun with that? Really? How many people here have ever scored an RFP before? Okay, so it's good to know what you make us do. I scored, yeah.
So you're there a lot, right?
Yeah, it's okay. You've witnessed the brawls behind closed doors. Mm-hmm.
So, who has some comments about what you read, what you saw, what in their responses?
Awesome engineering is response.
Totally awesome.
Why do you say that?
They just didn't provide a lot of the questions. They left out a lot of information.
They didn't provide a lot of the responses. What was that? I thought I heard someone say something.
I tried to be a little bit nice and gave them a couple points, but
Well,
I
so
would have scored them 0 all the way through.
okay.
How many people gave them zeros? Yeah,
So there's a few. Yeah.
there's a few.
Yeah. So they kind of. So one thing that we noticed with Awesome Engineering is that they kind of started to try to answer the questions, but you could tell that they didn't really have an actual program. They were trying to answer the questions without actually having responses. And so this is an example of seeing that kind of fluff in a response, right? So we want to be able to look for that and be able to recognize it when it shows up. What else did you see? Oh,
I was gonna say, and just as a side note, what fluff is the reason why, like at the port, only the small business team scores the small business section, because some firms are really good at writing the fluff, and they'll give you a whole page, and it sounds great. And then if I ask you who are they going to subcontract to, you go, oh, I don't know. And someone will give them 10 points, 15 points because it sounds fluffy, but there's no substance to it, and that's why we keep the just a few trained folks to score that section, and I know that's why Metro does it as well.
yeah, because some people have great marketing departments. They don't have good diversity programs, but they have great marketing departments.
Really good at talking, but without saying anything.
What else? What else did you notice? Maybe some comments about totally radical engineering.
I want to say the best thing I thought about Awesome Engineering was that they put the number of the criteria and wrote it out. So I really love it.
I love when they do that.
Yeah.
And that's about all they did.
Yeah, formatting response framework is very helpful, but there also has to be substance in the answers.
Right.
They talk about how they will have their global office do some of the work that they outsource it to.
Okay, right. So that's what I was mentioning before. Sometimes firms can self-perform things, and you have a goal, and they say, okay, well, we'll set aside this, we'll take off this portion, and we will subcontract that, and we'll work hard to get a certified firm in there so that we can get some participation.
Gretch?
I just have a quick question. Kimberly, can you explain, when you're going through here, one of the things that was difficult to determine is how you break down the 50. Because I came up with 7, but then I have the side, of being at court, so I've seen the score.
Yeah, it just depends. Some people break the questions up and group them so each question is worth so many points that add up to that 15, and some just evaluate it and give it an overall 15, right? It depends on there's no one size fits all style to that. But keep it consistent regardless of how you do it.
And in doing this, these instructions that we provided you were not entirely clear, and there was a little bit of purpose to that too. So when you're thinking about setting up something in your own agency, make sure that the people who are evaluating understand the evaluation scheme.
So this is like one section then
Ye-
of your RFP.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
just the diversity
Just
section.
one
Right.
section, and then you have the expertise creating just this one section.
Yes.
Exactly. Like I would never try to evaluate
No one's, yeah.
the approach on this project, but I can evaluate across a wide variety of industries diversity.
Thank you. That answers my
Yeah, so it's not like you're reading all of it, just the smaller section.
What other things did you notice about the responses? How about what did you notice about the way questions were asked and what sort of response that elicited from the answers? Yeah, it's a proposal process, so everybody got the same question.
A was a yes, no, and it was like a no, but.
Right,
Right.
so, and that's one thing about, if you're giving points for a firm being certified, you have to have a clear, process in your agency about what it means to have an application in to the certifying office. At Metro, that's worth 0 points because sometimes those are rejected.
Yeah.
Just because you have an application in doesn't mean you're actually going to be certified. So we get 0 points. What if they were formally certified but graduated from the program? Are you going to give any points for that or 0? At Metro, we give 0 again because if they've graduated, they're no longer considered disadvantaged, and so they don't need the program. So, but you have to have answers to those questions in your agency.
What if, I got one for you that we see often, what if they're not committing to use small business on this contract, but they have a history of using small businesses and a good program internally? Do you give them points for that? Well, we ask them for a narrative of their past performance. So what if their past performance is really good? Right. So but those are the things you want to think about as what is within your agency. Do you give them points for that narrative of their past performance and the unique programs they have internally to support small businesses, but they're not using them on this procurement? So that's part of that consistent scoring, and make sure everybody's on the same page when you're rolling this out internally. Yes. What do I do? I've evolved in my evaluations. In the beginning, I gave them points. I use the narrative to tell me if the goal that they're going to commit to is attainable, right? So if they're saying, I'm going to give you 30% small business, and they've never done it before, they have no history, they have no history of doing it, and their subcontracting plan is terrible, then I probably am not going to give them points for that.
In reading this, I see opportunity to split the points.
Mhm.
Yes or no gets about 50% of the point. The explanation is some points.
Yes, and that's pretty much how I phrase it. Are you giving me subs? Okay, now I'm going to use the rest to weight how realistic it is that you're going to get there. But again, one thing I want to say is keep it consistent, so that when if you ever have to do a debrief, everybody should be on the same page of how you got there. Plus, when I'm providing scores to other departments, I like to be consistent because sometimes I'm at odds with the person buying the services with my scores. They disagree with me, and I want to be able to defend it, and so consistency allows me to do that.
And what did you put on your papers? Did you put numbers? Did you write any notes? So if we left space for you to be able to write a few notes, if there's a debrief process and all you have is some numbers, it's really hard to be able to tell people why they got that score. So it's good to provide a little bit of notes, because once you go through this and you start evaluating a lot of these, they kind of run together. So the notes are helpful so that you can remind yourself what you're thinking at that moment. Big question back there? Did you saw a question? So this has been an exercise to just kind of think about what kind of answers you can get from the questions that you ask. Does anyone have any examples of things that are really working well in your agency that you'd like to share with the group? Or questions that you'd like a little bit of help addressing? Yeah. Okay.
So for smaller agencies or maybe less staffed agencies or places where the number of COVID companies are limited,
you don't have COVID, so we can talk about firm diversity, right? Firm demographics. So you don't have to be a certified firm to actually do well with diversity in your firm. So that's definitely one.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to when we were talking about, does your agency have a representative, right, that the community knows? So recently we noticed a gap in some business areas that for small businesses, even in the Portland metro area, which is pretty substantial number of certified firms. And so we made a point to go to chambers and rotaries and groups that had those businesses as members that weren't certified and talk to them about how to get certified. And that's something having somebody who's engaged with the local small business community can do. So it's just somebody who can go around and say, hey, did you know we have contracting opportunity? And so help build the database. I know someone in this room that has traveled with me through the states to help get people certified. So he's familiar with those types of outreaches. And so that's just one thing you can do. And so identifying, there might be someone in your community that could work with you and just pointing them in the right direction for certification. But then you also want to make sure you can support them for that first bid. So that's just one piece of it. And the other piece is just to have some sort of equity language within your proposals, because what'll happen is prime contractors will get folks certified for you. They will do it for you if there's goals or some sort of points they're going to get in that evaluation process. So I have seen just recently at the Port of Portland, we are going through a concessions. We're doing concessions. I just spent the whole morning evaluating concession RFPs, and what's happened is the primes that are bidding on these concession leases went out, and there are about 5 new certified ACDBE vendors now in COVID because they identified them and got them certified for me. And that was just from the power of putting the requirement in the RFP. So that just having the language will also build your database. But I bet you they're there.
We're about out of time, so
Maybe.
if you have a follow-up, go ahead.
I was just gonna sort of say, we always have the concern that if we always get pushed back a little bit about getting points, it's gonna take the business away from local.
Oh, yeah, that's just silliness.